Daniel 5 recounts the dramatic events surrounding the fall of Babylon and the mysterious writing on the wall during the reign of King Belshazzar. This chapter provides valuable historical and theological insights into the decline of the Babylonian Empire and the sovereignty of God over earthly kingdoms. Daniel 5 takes place against the backdrop of the decline of the Babylonian Empire and the rise of the Medo-Persian Empire. Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, is depicted as the last ruler of the Babylonian dynasty before the empire falls to Cyrus the Great of Persia in 539 BC. The historical accuracy of Daniel's account is supported by archaeological evidence, including the Nabonidus Chronicle and the Cyrus Cylinder, which corroborate the existence of Belshazzar and the fall of Babylon to the Persians. Verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, in an act of extravagance and excess, hosts a lavish banquet for his nobles, indulging in revelry and drunkenness. Verse 2. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded that the golden and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem be brought to him, that the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines might drink from them. In an act of disrespect and sacrilege, Belshazzar orders the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem by his predecessor Nebuchadnezzar to be used for drinking wine during the feast. Verse 3. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of God's house which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines drank from them. The sacred vessels from the temple in Jerusalem are brought into the banquet hall, and Belshazzar and his guests drink from them, defiling the holy objects dedicated to the worship of God. Verse 4. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood and of stone. In an act of idolatry, Belshazzar and his guests worship and praise the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood and stone, giving homage to false deities rather than acknowledging the true God. Verse 5. In the very hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Suddenly, during the midst of the banquet, a supernatural occurrence takes place as fingers of a man's hand appear and write on the wall of the palace, catching the attention of King Belshazzar. Verse 6. Then the king's face was changed in him, and his thoughts troubled him, and the joints of his thighs were loosened, and his knees struck one against another. The sight of the mysterious writing on the wall fills Belshazzar with fear and dread, causing his countenance to change, his thoughts to trouble him, and his limbs to tremble in fear. Verse 7. The king cried aloud to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whoever shall read this writing, and show me its interpretation, shall be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Desperate for an interpretation of the writing, Belshazzar summons the wise men of Babylon, promising great rewards to anyone who can decipher the message. Verse 8. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation. Despite the best efforts of the wise men of Babylon, none are able to read the writing on the wall or provide an interpretation to King Belshazzar. Verse 9. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his face was changed in him, and his lords were perplexed. Belshazzar's distress deepens as none of his wise men are able to interpret the writing, causing his nobles to become perplexed as well. Verse 10 to 12. The queen, by reason of the words of the king, and his lords came into the banquet house. The queen spoke and said, O king, live forever. Don't let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your face be changed. There is a man in your kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of your father light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And the king Nebuchadnezzar your father, the king, I say your father, made him master of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, because an excellent spirit and knowledge, and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of dark sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Upon hearing of the king's distress, the queen enters the banquet hall and offers words of reassurance to Belshazzar, urging him not to be troubled or dismayed. The queen reminds Belshazzar of Daniel, a man in whom the spirit of the holy gods resides, and who had demonstrated exceptional wisdom and understanding during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. The queen extols Daniel's exceptional qualities and abilities, emphasizing his skill in interpreting dreams, understanding complex matters, and resolving uncertainties. She suggests that Daniel be summoned to provide an interpretation of the mysterious writing on the wall. Verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel, who are of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Judah?" Daniel is brought before Belshazzar, who questions him about his identity and lineage, acknowledging him as one of the captives from Judah brought to Babylon during Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Verse 14. I have heard of you, that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Belshazzar acknowledges Daniel's reputation for possessing the spirit of the gods and exhibiting exceptional wisdom and understanding. Verse 15. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. Belshazzar informs Daniel of the failure of his wise men to interpret the writing on the wall, expressing his hope that Daniel will be able to provide the interpretation. Verse 16. But I have heard of you, that you can give interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold about your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Belshazzar reiterates his expectation that Daniel will be able to interpret the writing on the wall, offering him the same reward promised to his wise men if he succeeds. Verse 17. Then Daniel answered before the king, "Let your gifts be to yourself, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king, and make known to him the interpretation." Daniel refuses to accept the king's rewards and instead offers to interpret the writing on the wall, emphasizing his commitment to providing the king with the interpretation regardless of any personal gain. Verse 18. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father the kingdom and greatness and glory and majesty. Daniel begins his interpretation by reminding Belshazzar of God's role in granting Nebuchadnezzar his kingdom, greatness and glory, establishing a connection between Belshazzar's reign and that of his father. Verse 19. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he killed, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he raised up, and whom he would he put down. Daniel recounts the extent of Nebuchadnezzar's power and authority, describing how his dominion inspired fear and awe among the nations, with the ability to exercise life and death over his subjects as he saw fit. Verse 20 to 21. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened so that he dealt proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him, and he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the animals, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of the sky, until he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men, and that he sets up over it whomever he will. However, Daniel warns Belshazzar of the consequences of Nebuchadnezzar's pride and arrogance, which led to his downfall and removal from power, emphasizing the importance of humility before God. Daniel describes Nebuchadnezzar's period of humiliation and madness, during which he lived among the wild animals, eating grass like oxen, until he acknowledged the sovereignty of the Most High God over all earthly kingdoms and rulers. Verse 22 to 23. You, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this, but have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you. And you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood and stone, which don't see, nor hear, nor know, and the God in whose hand your breath is, and whose are all your ways, you have not glorified. Daniel rebukes Belshazzar for failing to learn from his father's example and for allowing his own heart to be filled with pride and arrogance, despite his knowledge of Nebuchadnezzar's experience. Daniel accuses Belshazzar of blasphemy and sacrilege for defiling the sacred vessels of the temple in Jerusalem and praising idols of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, instead of glorifying the one true God who holds power over all creation. Verse 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from before him, and this writing was inscribed. As Daniel concludes his rebuke, the hand that wrote the mysterious words on the wall is sent from the presence of God, reaffirming the divine origin of the message and the imminent judgment upon Belshazzar and his kingdom. Verse 25. This is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. The writing on the wall consists of 4 Aramaic words, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, each of which carries symbolic significance and serves as a message of judgment upon Belshazzar and his kingdom. Verse 26. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and brought it to an end. Daniel provides the interpretation of the first word, Mene, explaining that God has numbered Belshazzar's kingdom and brought it to an end, signaling the imminent downfall of his reign. Verse 27. Tekel, you are weighed in the balances and are found wanting. The second word, Tekel, signifies that Belshazzar has been weighed in the balances of divine judgment and found lacking, indicating his failure to meet the standards of righteousness and justice before God. Verse 28. Upharsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The third word, Upharsin, denotes the division of Belshazzar's kingdom and its imminent transfer of power to the Medes and Persians, signaling the end of Babylonian rule. Verse 29. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with purple, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Despite the ominous message of judgment, Belshazzar honors his promise to Daniel and rewards him with the promised gifts, acknowledging his role as a wise and faithful servant. Verse 30. In that night Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. However, the events take a dramatic turn as Belshazzar's reign comes to a sudden and violent end, with the invasion of the Medes and Persians resulting in his death, fulfilling the prophecy of the writing on the wall. Verse 31. Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Following Belshazzar's death, Darius the Mede assumes control of the Babylonian kingdom, marking the transition of power to the Medes and Persians as prophesied by Daniel. The manifestation of the writing on the wall proved to be accurate and consequential, sealing the fate of the reckless Belshazzar. Just as Daniel had foretold, the Babylonian kingdom was divided between the Medes and Persians, and this occurred on the very night of the revelation. Belshazzar met his demise, and his reign was succeeded by Darius the Mede. The occurrence of Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin on the king's wall serves as a stark reminder of the principle of reaping what one sows, as seen in Galatians 6:7-8. God, as the ultimate judge, meticulously evaluates all matters and dispenses justice in due time. At times, God communicates unmistakably with us, convicting us of wrongdoing and cautioning us of imminent judgment. It is unwise to disregard the writing on the wall, a clear warning given by God. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video to spread the message of humility and accountability, and subscribe to our channel for more biblical insights. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the historical and political context of Daniel 5 and its relevance to contemporary society. Thank you for being a part of our online community and helping us grow in faith and understanding. God bless.